Hello, it's 10 a.m. on Wednesday, the 11th of March. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Thanks for joining us on yet another very cold day here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at the headlines. A US-based analysis website that monitors North Korea from the skies says there's only limited activity at the country's nuclear and rocket test sites, suggesting no tests will happen in the coming months. Senior diplomats from South Korea, China and Japan are set to meet in Seoul today to lay the groundwork for a trilateral foreign ministers meeting set for late March. Plus, German Chancellor Angela Merkel on a trip to Japan once again calls on the Japanese government to come to terms with the country's past wrongdoings if it wants to rebuild ties with its neighbours. Our top story this morning, North Korea monitoring website 38 North says the country is unlikely to conduct a nuclear test or launch a long-range missile over the next few months. Citing satellite imagery, the US-based think tank said there are only signs of regular maintenance at North Korea's Punggye-ri nuclear test site and at the Sohae nuclear launching station. That said, the website acknowledges that the North Korean leadership could move forward quickly with either a bomb test or missile launch if it felt inclined. Now, there has been speculation the North might carry out a provocation in response to the ongoing annual joint military drills between South Korea and the United States. North Korea sees those exercises as a rehearsal for war, but Seoul and Washington insist they are purely defensive in nature. South Korea plans to impose sanctions on any company that complies with North Korea's recent unilateral wage hike at the Inter-Korean factory complex in Kaesong. The Unification Ministry here in Seoul says the government plans to outline the possible legal and administrative punishments if they hike wages in March. This follows Pyongyang's decision to up the monthly salary of North Korean workers at the complex by 5% to $74. The ministry says that if the measure is implemented, North Korea would earn almost $500,000 in additional revenue from the complex. Seoul says it wants to hold talks with the North on the matter, but the call has so far gone unanswered. US Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert is settling back into his day-to-day activities after he was discharged from hospital on Tuesday, 5 days after a shocking knife attack. The US envoy said the experience, while terrifying, would not affect Seoul-Washington relations or his approachable style to diplomacy. Our Hwang Sang-hee reports.
Scarred but with a huge smile on his face, Ambassador Lippert thanked the South Korean public for their support following last week's brutal knife attack. Speaking to reporters before leaving the hospital on Tuesday, the U.S. envoy said in Korean that the incident will only strengthen ties between Seoul and Washington.
Beyond 되이 땅이 굳어진다.
Ambassador Lippert, who was attacked by a man wielding a knife at a breakfast meeting in central Seoul last week, needed 80 stitches on his right cheek and left arm. The stitches on his face have been removed, but doctors will be visiting his home every day to check on his arm until he is fully recovered. All things considered, the envoy says he feels pretty darn good.
I mean, it was obviously a scary incident, but I'm walking, talking, holding my baby, hugging my wife. So I just feel really good.
But he did hint at a possible change in the security procedures, as many blamed lax security for his injuries. At the time of the attack, the ambassador only had one full-time South Korean bodyguard with him.
But obviously, as people and the State Department in Washington have said, we're going to take a hard look at our techniques, procedures here, and I'll leave it to the security experts to come up with recommendations and policies going forward.
The ambassador, with a mix of Korean words, asked the South Korean public to treat him as they had done before the incident, as the guy next door and Sejun's dad.
I will still be a 동네 아저씨 and Sejuni Appa, as people here in Korea have called me.
Despite the appalling incident, Ambassador Lippert said that he wants to return to the job as soon as possible to advance the alliance between their two countries, adding that there will be no changes to their economic, political, and military cooperation. 황상희, 아리랑 뉴스.
Senior officials from South Korea, China and Japan will meet on this Wednesday in Seoul to lay the groundwork for a trilateral foreign ministers meeting set for later this month. Korean officials say today's meeting will focus on ways to boost three-way cooperation and add that the issues discussed will also be on the agenda at the upcoming high-level talks. Now, one of the key issues is to gauge the possibility of a trilateral summit a little further down the road. Korea and Japan both see the need for a leaders' summit, despite the numerous historical and territorial disputes among the three countries. China is less keen and is advising a more cautious approach. The trilateral foreign ministers meeting has been stalled since 2012 after Japan nationalized the Senkaku Islands, known as Diaoyu in China. Japan and China each claim ownership of the East China Sea islets. The official who first pushed for Korea's recently passed anti-corruption bill says she doesn't think it's unconstitutional to include private school teachers and journalists as subjects in the bill. At a press conference on Tuesday, Kim Young-ran, the former chair of the Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission, said a survey has found nearly 70% of Koreans think it's advisable to add both those groups. Stressing the bill does not violate the right to equality, Kim said there was a need for measures to protect the freedom of the press. The bill states that public servants, members of the media and private school and kindergarten teachers will face criminal punishment if they or their spouses are found to have accepted $900 or more in money or gifts or special treatment from a person unrelated to their work. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, on a visit to Japan, has once again urged the country to address its wartime past and stress the importance of reconciliation with its neighbours. Merkel's latest remarks add to the mounting international pressure on Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to offer a full and frank apology during his highly anticipated statement on the issue, which is going to come in August. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
During the second day of her two-day visit to Japan, German Chancellor Angela Merkel reportedly advised Japan to properly address the issue of the forced sexual enslavement of Asian women during World War II. Japan-based Kyodo News reports that Merkel emphasized the importance of reconciliation between Japan and Korea during her meeting with the leader of Japan's opposition Democratic Party, Kazuya Okada. Merkel added that it's important to face the problems of the past in response to Okada's concerns about a lack of reconciliation with Japan's neighboring countries, mainly Korea and China. A day before, she had urged Japan to face its wartime atrocities, referring to Germany's reconciliatory efforts after World War II. Merkel's latest remarks have been seen as a call for change and the lukewarm attitude currently taken by the administration of Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe toward acknowledging Japan's wartime atrocities. And she's not the only one pressuring Japan to offer an apology. Korea's foreign ministry spokesperson Do Gang-il said on Tuesday that the country expects Japan to build trust with its neighbors by making courageous efforts to face up to its history, just as Germany did after World War II. Also, U.S. Representative Mike Honda has said that Abe should not be allowed to appear before the U.S. Congress without repenting for the country's wartime history. In February, Abe had conveyed his wish to address Congress, and if he does, he will become the first Japanese prime minister to do so. Prime Minister Abe is set to issue a statement in August to mark the 70th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II, but there's speculation that he'll try to water down Japan's wartime atrocities. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Korea's finance ministry says the country's recovery momentum is not strong enough at the moment, and it's pointing to the need for more stimulus measures. Now, with the government pledging to pour in billions of dollars into the economy in the first half of this year, all eyes now are on whether the central bank will do its part and cut the key rate on Thursday, our Hwang Ji-ae reports.
Korea's major economic indicators were all down this year. Output, consumption, and exports all plunged, while consumer prices would also have marked a drop if it were not for a tobacco price hike. The finance ministry is expressing concerns, saying the country's recovery momentum is still weak. It adds that lingering uncertainties abroad, like a weak Japanese yen and a possible rate hike by the U.S. Federal Reserve, also pose a threat to the domestic economy. To prop up growth, the government has announced a $9 billion stimulus package for the first half of this year and called on the corporate sector to raise their wage levels, which will in turn boost domestic demand. Given the efforts made by the government, market expectations are mounting for the central bank to cut its key rate in the coming months.
There's a high possibility that the Bank of Korea will cut the rate in April as it revises down its growth outlook for the Korean economy.
The Bank of Korea will set its key rate for this month on Thursday. Attention is now focused on the central bank's next move, as the prospect of another rate cut also prompts concerns about the country's snowballing household debt. Punggye-ri, ARIRANG News.
Police in the UK are coming under extremely heavy scrutiny as lawmakers there try to figure out how 3 British schoolgirls slipped under the radar of authorities last month to join the Islamic State extremist group in Syria. For more on this and the rest of the global stories we're following at this hour, we connect to Eunice Kim at the News Centre. So, Eunice, this was a rather charged session with the committee chairman, Keith Vaz, even suggesting it dealt a huge blow to the credibility of London's police force.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. UK police and intelligence authorities, of course, also under heat for letting the Islamic State foreign-faced jihadi John slip through, even though he was on their radar for years. But in this case of the missing schoolgirls, there was at least one instance of missed communication. UK police had known one of the friends of the 3 schoolgirls had left to join IS months earlier and, in fact, had questioned the girls on this friend. They gave the 15 and 16-year-olds a letter to notify their parents that this questioning session had happened, but that letter never reached their parents, who had no idea their daughters were following extremists on social media and, in fact, had plans of their own to cross over to Syria. The family expressed their frustrations at authorities, who say they would have reacted differently had they been alerted of the warning signs. A senior British police officer also said the teenagers would not be prosecuted for terrorism if they did one day return.
And Eunice, on a related note, a former hostage of the Islamic State group has shed some light on the jihadists who had him held hostage.
Yeah, that's right. We're talking about French journalist Nicolas Henin. He was held captive with James Foley, Stephen Sotloff, David Haynes, all of those names, of course, those who have been brutally executed in public propaganda videos. Henin was released about a year ago, last April, and he told the BBC recently that he observed many of his captors to be, quote, fragile people who started with a genuine desire to help people, victims in Syria, but who were immediately pushed to commit crimes once they arrived. He said he saw flickers of doubt and a lot of bad faith to justify their actions in his 10 months of captivity, Mark.
Well, let's switch gears now from Islamic State and to the topic of fast food. Quite a big jump. But the movement towards healthier choices in the US is gaining momentum. Burger King, one of the biggest fast food chains in the world, is now dropping soda from their kids' menu in America.
Yeah, that's right. And this follows similar moves by their competitor, McDonald's and Wendy's, which is, of course, bad news for the soft drink industry, as many Americans begin their soda habit when they are children. Now, there was no pomp and circumstance with this move by Burger King. It happened quietly last month. Burger King did explain the move to USA Today today, though, as being a part of the company's ongoing effort to offer guests options that match lifestyle needs. Instead of pop, milk, or apple juice will be prominently featured as options for their younger patrons. Now, this comes after years of campaigning by advocacy groups, which includes moms groups as well. The U.S. Centers of Disease Control and Prevention says over a third of American children and teens were obese in 2012, and sugary drinks viewed as a hefty contributor to that trend, Mark.
Yes, well, let's face it, no one really walks into Burger King expecting to get healthy food, but it certainly is a step in the right direction, and hopefully parents will take note and cut out all those sugary drinks at home as well.
That's important.
Okay, thank you, Eunice, and we'll see you back at noon.
See you then.
The wait is over. The highly anticipated Apple Watch is here. Apple unveiled it this week at an event in San Francisco, making it the first new category to be introduced under CEO Tim Cook. Our Ji Myung-gil has more on the watch and what it means for the wearables market.
It's been 5 years since Apple launched the iPad, and now the company is making a major play for the wearables market with this Apple Watch. The watch comes in 3 different models: the Apple Watch, the Apple Watch Sport, and the high-end Apple Watch Edition. The watch has many integrated features such as the Apple Pay mobile wallet, messaging, calls, health tracking applications, and the ability to connect your watch to a friend's watch. Pre-orders for the watch start April 10th and it will go on sale on April 24th. It will first be available in the US, Australia, China, and Japan, among other countries.
The Apple Watch is the most advanced timepiece ever created.
Apple enters a market already crowded by major tech companies, ranging from Korea's Samsung and LG to China's Huawei and startups such as Pebble. And with the smartwatch market expected to take off this year with projected sales of 28 million units from last year's 4.6 million, mobile manufacturers are pouring their efforts into making their smartwatches better and more visually appealing. Samsung, which had attempted to steal Apple's thunder with the release of its Galaxy Gear in 2013, is planning to release a new smartwatch during the first half of the year. LG surprised many with its Urbane smartwatch, which has the ability to make and receive phone calls without the need for a connected smartphone. Apple requires a connection to an iPhone to be fully operational. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
Now, from Apple Watches and other smart devices, we're going to take a look at Korean classical music now. It's known as gugak, and it has a history that dates back well over 1,000 years. The natural sound of gugak is highly prized, but there's a secret behind how that sound is achieved in modern theatres. Our Im Yun-hee has the details.
Gugak stems from a long, rich history and has maintained Korea's cultural heritage through time. There are various genres of music within gugak, linked together by the use of traditional Korean instruments. There are no microphones on this stage or speakers to project the sounds, yet every pluck of the kayagum and boom of the puk is crisp and clear to the audience members who are listening.
They don't use a mic, but you can still hear the individual sounds of each instrument, which is really special.
The set pieces on a gugak stage are typically centered, and there's a traditional folding screen placed center stage to amplify the sounds of the instruments. The material of the folding screen plays a role as well, preventing any unwanted sounds from reaching the audience. Meanwhile, the instruments used in gugak have a significantly shorter reverberation time of only 1.2 seconds at most, as compared to classical instruments with much longer reverberation times. To compensate, the stage is designed and arranged to create the ideal setting for the instruments.
With gugak instruments, the reverberations are short, so if it's played in a hall made for long reverberations, the sounds are dulled and jumbled. Instruments with reverberations that are shorter than classical instruments need a different setting for the optimal sound.
The National Kugak Center holds regular performances to preserve Korea's traditions and lead the music of Kugak into the future. Im Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
And a good Wednesday morning to you all as we kick things off with some Asian Cup news. Now, earlier this year, Korea came oh so close to winning their first Asian Cup title in 55 years in Australia, but unfortunately settled with a second place finish. And now they can look forward to the 2019 Asian Cup, which will take place in the UAE. Now, with an AFC meeting taking place in Bahrain, the UAE beat out Iran for the hosting rights to the 2019 Asian Cup. And it'll be an exciting one, as the tournament will include 24 Asian nations compared to the 16 nations in the 2015 Asian Cup. Meanwhile, the last time the UAE hosted the Asian Cup was back in 1996, when Korea was eliminated against Iran in the quarterfinals 6-2. Now, South Korean striker Park Ju-young was at one point the star who was supposed to lead the national team to glory. Well, that unfortunately never happened, and he even struggled to find playing time with several clubs during the past several years. And now he's coming back home. Now, FC Seoul, who is actually in need of a striker at the moment, announced that they have signed Park Ju-young to a 3-year deal, which will make him one of the highest, if not the highest paid K-leaguer in the league. And while FC Seoul planned to utilize him right away, turns out his contract with Al Shabaab in Saudi Arabia has not expired and would have to wait for the transfer to go through. Now, Park Ju-young made his professional debut with FC Seoul back in 2005 and scored 33 goals for the K-League side. Now, two-time Olympic speed skating gold medalist Lee Sang-hwa might have ended her season early, but it's not stopping her from preparing for her next season. In fact, she's planning to create a dream team, not in Korea, but overseas. Now, according to her agency, Lee Sang-hwa, who's currently without a team, will form what they're calling the Dream Team, which will consist of a foreign coach and players of other nationalities in time for the 2015-2016 season. Now, currently, they're looking into the U.S., Canada, and the Netherlands as a possible destination. Now, she's set to finalize her dream team and continue her pursuit of a third gold medal at the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games. Now, with the Changwon LG Sakers up 1-0 against the Goyang Orions in the best-of-5 KBL playoff series, they try to make it 2-0 on Tuesday as Game 2 tipped off at the Changwon Gymnasium. Of course, going into the game here, Orions off to a great start, taking a 24-17 lead before LG rallies back in the second quarter to take a slim 38-37 lead. Now, LG, led by Devon Jefferson's near triple-double, take a 4-point lead going into the fourth quarter, but a monster game by Orion's Troy Gillenwater and his 37 points, 9 boards, get the Orions rallying back late in the game to get a crucial away victory, 76-72, to level the series at 1 apiece. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports news.
Well, it's shaping up to be slightly milder than yesterday, but not enough to put away your winter coat just yet. But things will warm up by tomorrow afternoon with a high jumping back to the seasonal norms. So all the cold wave advisory has been lifted, but now Dry weather watch is in effect across much of the country, including here in the capital. So drink plenty of water, and eye drops should help you to keep your eyes a bit more comfortable. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The daytime high here in Seoul will climb up to 5, while Daegu and Busan should be relatively milder, peaking at 11, and Gwangju will rise to 10 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 8, and Dokdo tops out at 3. Now we're having a transition period into spring this week, so please stay warm and take good care of your health. And much warmer days are ahead of us starting early next week. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
That's all we have for now. Plenty more stories are online, and it's also worth checking out our smartphone application for all the latest news and programs Arirang TV has to offer. We'll be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. So until then, goodbye.